In my previous life, back in the 1980s, my older sister married a rough, simple-minded butcher, while I, Lisa, foolishly gave myself to a notorious thug feared by everyone in the village. Who could have imagined that the outlaw would later rise to power, like a kite soaring in the wind? He earned piles of money and let me spend freely, allowing me to live a life of indulgent luxury. My sister, however, despised her husband's fishy stench. She grew cold toward him and eventually started a secret affair with a lazy drifter from the village. Out of love for her, I listened to my mother and tried to persuade her to stay content with her life. But when she saw me dressed in silk and living in comfort, envy burned so fiercely in her that it consumed her reason. One careless moment, she struck me with a fatal blow. When I opened my eyes again, time had turned back to the very day the matchmaker came to discuss marriage. The morning light filtered through the paper window, casting pale golden patterns across the worn wooden floor. I lay perfectly still on my thin cotton mattress, listening to the familiar sounds of our small farmhouse. The creak of my mother's wooden clogs on the dirt floor, the clatter of her iron wok as she stirred something that smelled faintly of wild onions and regret. 3 lifetimes of memory crowded my skull, but only 2 had I truly lived. The first, wretched and brief, ended with my sister's hands around my throat. The second, triumphant and long, had seen me rise from nothing to own the most beloved fashion brand in the country. And now a third, though perhaps third wasn't the right word. This was a second chance, a reset button pressed by forces I didn't understand and didn't care to question. I sat up slowly, testing my young body. Smooth skin, unmarked by time. Strong limbs that had never known hard labor. I was 18 again, and today, the matchmaker would arrive. Lisa, my mother's voice cut through the morning like a rusty blade. Get up, you lazy girl. The matchmaker will be here before noon, and you're still lying about like a salted fish. I smiled to myself, a small, secret thing that tugged at the corners of my lips. In my previous life, my first life, I should say, those words had filled me with dread. Now they sounded like the opening notes of an opera I already knew by heart. I dressed quickly in the same faded blue jacket I had worn that day decades ago. The fabric was rough against my skin, nothing like the silk I had grown accustomed to in my second life. But I didn't mind. Silk would come again. Everything would come again, only this time, I would conduct the orchestra instead of playing a forgotten instrument in the back. When I stepped into the main room, my sister Hannah was already seated at the wooden table, her back straight as a bamboo pole, her glossy black hair pulled back with a red ribbon that had once been mine. She was beautiful, everyone said so, with her delicate features and her way of looking at people as if she were evaluating their worth. In my first life, I had envied that beauty. In my second, I had learned to see what lay beneath it. Finally decided to join the living. Hannah didn't look up from the bowl of congee she was stirring. The pigs could hear you snoring from the pen. I took my seat across from her and accepted the bowl my mother thrust at me with little ceremony. Good morning to you too, sister. My mother hovered by the stove, her face creased with the particular anxiety that only marriage negotiations seem to provoke. Remember, both of you, when the matchmaker comes, let me do the talking. Hannah, you'll marry the butcher's son, Caleb Wright. His family has 3 pig farms and a new brick house. Lisa, she glanced at me with something that might have been guilt or might have been impatience. You'll be introduced to Brandon Lee. I took a sip of my congee. It was thin and watery, with more wild greens than rice. The same breakfast I had eaten on this day in my first life. The same breakfast that would soon be replaced by feasts I couldn't yet imagine. Brandon Lee, I repeated, tasting the name on my tongue. In my first life, he had been my ruination and my making. A thug with a pretty face and a cruel streak, he had treated me like a trophy he'd won in a card game. Later, after I divorced him and built my own empire, he had become a ghost in my past. A cautionary tale I told myself when I felt too proud. The one who, the very same, my mother cut me off, her voice sharp. And before you say anything, I know his reputation. But he's got connections in the city now, and he's promised to take good care of his wife. Besides, her voice softened almost imperceptibly, someone has to marry him and your sister deserves better. There it was. The same words, delivered with the same casual cruelty. Your sister deserves better. In my first life, I had swallowed them along with my pride. I had nodded and smiled and accepted my fate as the less favored daughter, the one who would be sacrificed to the village thug so that Hannah could live like a queen. But I was no longer that girl. Before I could respond, a commotion erupted from the courtyard. My mother's face lit up. They are here. Both of you straighten your clothes and remember what I said. The matchmaker swept in like a summer storm, loud, overwhelming, and impossible to ignore. Her name was Auntie Chen, and she wore a brilliant red jacket that clashed magnificently with her purple trousers. Behind her came two men, and my breath caught in my throat when I saw them. Caleb Wright was first. In my first life, I had barely looked at him. He was destined for Hannah, and I had been taught not to covet what belonged to my sister. But now I saw him clearly. Tall and broad-shouldered, with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners and hands that looked strong enough to lift a pig, but gentle enough to hold a child. He wore a simple gray tunic, clean but unadorned, and there was something solid about him, something steady, like an old oak tree that had weathered 100 storms without breaking. Behind him came the man who had been my first husband. Brandon Lee was handsome, there was no denying that. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, and eyes that held a dangerous sparkle, like sunlight reflecting off a knife blade. He swaggered when he walked, confident and careless, as if the world owed him something and he intended to collect. In my first life, I had found that swagger irresistible. Now I saw it for what it was, the gait of a man who had never been told no. Auntie Chen clapped her hands together. Such fine young men. Such fine young women. Today is a lucky day, Mrs. Lin, very lucky indeed. My mother bustled about, pouring tea and offering dried dates while making sure Hannah was positioned in the best light. Hannah, for her part, played her role perfectly. Demure when she needed to be, bright-eyed and charming, the picture of a virtuous maiden waiting to be won. I stayed in the shadows by the window, watching. Caleb's eyes found mine for just a moment. There was no recognition in them, how could there be? But something flickered there all the same. Curiosity, perhaps. Or maybe just the natural politeness of a man who noticed everyone in the room. Not just the one everyone wanted him to notice. Brandon, predictably, was already staring at Hannah. I sipped my tea and waited. For the first half hour, everything proceeded exactly as I remembered. Auntie Chen praised Hannah's beauty and Lisa's industriousness, though everyone knew Hannah had never washed a dish in her life. My mother extolled Caleb's business acumen and Brandon's connections, a word that could mean anything from legitimate partnerships to criminal enterprises, and in Brandon's case, meant the latter. Caleb sat quietly, nodding at appropriate moments, while Brandon leaned back in his chair as if he already owned the house. Then Hannah spoke. I absolutely won't marry that man, Caleb Wright. The words fell into the room like stones dropped into still water. My mother's teacup paused halfway to her lips. Auntie Chen's smile froze. Even Brandon, perpetually unflappable, raised an eyebrow. I only want Brandon Lee. My mother recovered first. Hannah, what nonsense are you talking? We discussed this. I've made up my mind. Hannah's voice rang clear and stubborn. She stood up from her chair, her red ribbon catching the light, and pointed at Brandon with a dramatic flourish. Him. I want him. The silence that followed was deafening. I set down my teacup and watched the show. In my first life, this moment had never happened. Hannah had accepted Caleb with the grace of a cat accepting a bowl of cream, and I had been pushed toward Brandon like a lamb to slaughter. But something had changed. Hannah, like me, remembered. Of course. I should have realized it sooner. The way she had looked at me when I woke up this morning, sharp and assessing. The way she had positioned herself in the best light when the men arrived. My sister had returned too, dragged back by whatever cosmic force had granted me a second chance. But unlike me, Hannah didn't know how to use that chance. She only knew what she wanted, Brandon's future wealth, the luxury she had seen me enjoy in our previous lives. She didn't understand that the fortune she coveted had been built by my hands, not his. Even if he has that nasty habit of peeking at the neighbor ladies when they go to the restroom. Hannah continued, apparently determined to air all of Brandon's dirty laundry in one breath. Those women aren't exactly innocent either. My mother's face turned purple. Auntie Chen's mouth hung open like a fish gasping for air. Even Caleb, steady, unflappable Caleb, looked vaguely horrified. Brandon, to his credit, merely smirked. "I'm flattered, Miss Lin. I didn't know my reputation preceded me quite so." "Thoroughly. The tea has gone cold," I said into the silence. "Shall I brew a fresh pot?" Everyone turned to look at me. Hannah's eyes narrowed, trying to read my face. My mother looked grateful for the interruption. Auntie Chen seized the opportunity to fan herself vigorously with her handkerchief. I rose gracefully and walked to the kitchen, leaving them to sort out the disaster. Behind me, I heard Hannah's voice rising again, argumentative and fierce, and my mother's attempts to calm her. Caleb said nothing. Brandon laughed. In the kitchen, I leaned against the counter and allowed myself a small, genuine smile. Let her have him, I thought. Let her learn the hard way. When I returned with fresh tea, the dynamics of the room had shifted dramatically. Auntie Chen had recovered her composure and was now speaking in low, urgent tones to my mother. Hannah had insinuated herself next to Brandon, who seemed amused by her attention. And Caleb, poor, bewildered Caleb, sat alone, looking like a man who had walked into the wrong theater. Hannah has explained her preferences, my mother said stiffly when I sat down. Her eyes avoided mine. And after some discussion, we've decided to accommodate her wishes. How generous of you, I said mildly. Lisa, don't be difficult. You know your sister has always been sacrificing her happiness so I can live comfortably with Caleb. I finished for her. Yes, I believe I heard something along those lines. My mother's mouth snapped shut. Hannah shot me a venomous glance but said nothing. Auntie Chen cleared her throat. So it's settled then. Miss Hannah will marry Mr. Brandon Lee, and Miss Lisa will marry Mr. Caleb Wright. The weddings will be held together 3 days from now. A double celebration. The village hasn't seen such joy in years. Joy. What an interesting word to describe what was about to unfold. Caleb finally spoke, his voice low and careful. Miss Lisa, if this arrangement is not to your liking, I would understand. I know I'm not. The arrangement is fine. I met his eyes and held them. Up close, they were the color of autumn leaves, warm and deep. I have no objections. Something passed between us then, something I couldn't name. Recognition, perhaps, though he couldn't possibly know me. Or maybe just the quiet understanding of two people who had both been cast aside by those who should have loved them. Then it's settled, my mother said quickly, before anyone could change their minds. Auntie Chen, let's discuss the betrothal gifts. The haggling began in earnest, how much Brandon would pay for Hannah, how much Caleb would bring for me. The numbers were different this time. Hannah's bride price was higher, inflated by my mother's sudden conviction that Brandon was a man of hidden wealth. Mine was less. A few worn-out quilts, some household goods, the usual pittance. I stopped listening. My mind was already elsewhere, calculating, planning, building the empire that had made me wealthy in my second life. The clothing designs I would sketch, the storefronts I would rent, the brand I would build from nothing. This time, Caleb would be at my side. This time, I wouldn't have to do it alone. That night, after the matchmaker had gone and the men had returned to their homes, the house settled into an uneasy quiet. Hannah had retreated to her room, no doubt gloating over her victory. My father, who had said almost nothing during the negotiations, as was his custom, sat smoking his pipe by the cold stove, his eyes distant. I waited until the crows outside had gone silent, and the only light came from the candle flickering in my mother's room. Then I quietly pushed the door open. The creaking sound made her turn from her warm bed. She was sewing, frantically, it seemed. A pile of red silk fabric spread across her lap. When she saw it was me, the brief hope in her eyes faded, replaced by the familiar impatience. I told you to go rest, I said gently, stepping closer. She sighed, not looking up from her work. I'm just worried about your sister. I'm sewing a few more wedding quilts for her. She's different from you, you know. She's sacrificing her own happiness so you can live comfortably with Caleb. Remember to help her later. If she's happy, you'll be happy too. I looked at the red silk quilt embroidered with dragons and phoenixes on the bed. The stitching was exquisite, the materials expensive, far finer than anything she had ever made for me. And where's my quilt, Mother? I asked quietly. She froze for a moment. Her hands stilled on the needle. When she spoke, her tone was strange, defensive, almost angry. You're about to marry the richest butcher in the region, Lisa. What more could you possibly want? You'll live better than any landlord's wife. You don't need fancy quilts. I turned away and walked to the door, then paused with my hand on the latch. The night air drifted through the cracks, cool and fragrant with the smell of rain coming. Mother, I said without looking back, did you leave the cotton out to dry? Of course I did. It needs another day in the sun. Why? No reason. Good night. I stepped out and closed the door behind me, then walked deliberately to my own room. I did not tell her that a storm was coming. The first spring thunderstorm, swift and sudden, the kind that soaked everything left uncovered. In my first life, I had run out to save the cotton, desperate to please her. This time, I pulled the blanket over my head and went to sleep. The next morning, her cries woke me. Oh God, are you blind up there? My daughter's wedding is tomorrow and all the cotton is soaked. I pulled the blanket over my head, stifling my laughter. Hannah's voice joined the chorus, irritated and sharp. Mom, why are you crying over a few torn quilts? If you really love me, then buy me a pair of gold bracelets for my dowry. Silence. Then my mother's voice, suddenly bright with inspiration. Oh, how could I have been so foolish? My daughter is still the cleverest one. Yesterday, Caleb's family brought $3,000 as the bride price. That's enough to buy a 40-gram pair of gold bracelets. Under the blanket, my hands clenched into fists. There it was. The same betrayal, delivered in the same careless words. She would take my bride price, the money that should have started my married life, and spend it on gold for Hannah. In my first life, I had accepted that too. I had smiled and nodded, and told myself that sisters loved each other, that generosity was its own reward. Not this time. I dressed slowly, taking care with my appearance. When I emerged from my room, Hannah was already at the table, smirking at me over her bowl of congee. Sleeping like a dead pig, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. No wonder you're marrying that stinking butcher. You two are made for each other. Not like me, I'm about to marry the richest man in town. Lisa, you'll always be the kind of woman who can only stand there and envy me. She pushed back from the table and strutted toward the door, eager to find Brandon and strengthen her bond with him. I let her go. If I remembered correctly, at this moment, Brandon Lee was lying in Sophie Grant's bed. Tangled in the sheets of the widow everyone whispered about but no one defended. But Hannah would discover that soon enough. My mood, already sour, lifted slightly at the thought. After all, a grayer misfortune awaited her. And me. I had a wedding to prepare for. A wedding to a man who, in 2 separate lives, had loved me without ever knowing it. 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. My mother, still fuming about the ruined cotton, threw herself into Hannah's wedding arrangements with a fervor that bordered on manic. The gold bracelets were purchased, heavy, gleaming things that Hannah wore around the house like a declaration of war. The red wedding gown was borrowed from Mrs. Chen's daughter, a faded thing that had seen 3 weddings already. I watched it all from a distance, untouched and untouchable. No one asked about my preparations. No one wondered what I would wear or what I wanted. In their minds, I was already married to Caleb, already consigned to a life of pig farming and mediocrity. They didn't know what was coming. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright, the storm long past. I woke early, before anyone else, and washed my face in cold water from the well. My hands were steady. My heart was calm. Nina arrived before the sun had fully risen. She was Caleb's younger sister, a vivacious girl of 16 with a round face and curious eyes. In my first life, I had barely known her. She had been sent away to school before the wedding and didn't return until years later. But this time she was here, and in her arms she carried something wrapped in white silk. The matchmaker said we should come early, Nina said breathlessly, setting her bundle on my bed. My brother didn't sleep at all last night. He was too nervous. I smiled, genuine warmth spreading through my chest. He has nothing to be nervous about. Oh, but he does. He wants everything to be perfect for you. Nina's fingers danced over the bundle, unwrapping it with theatrical slowness. The silk fell away and I gasped. The dress was everything I had never dared to dream. pure white like fresh snow under moonlight. Layers of delicate lace cascaded over satin, so fine it seemed to shimmer with its own light. The bodice was embroidered with tiny pearls, each one hand-sewn, and the sleeves fell in soft bell shapes that would brush against my wrists like whispers. "It's $10,000 wedding dress," Nina said, her voice full of wonder. "Every stitch, every detail. It's perfect, worth every cent." I couldn't breathe. In my first life, I had worn a borrowed red gown, faded and too short. In my second, I had worn designer dresses worth more than most people's houses. But this was different. This was a gift, not a purchase. An offering from a man who had never met me, but somehow already knew me. "It's beautiful," I whispered. Nina beamed. When the matchmaker came to discuss the marriage, my brother secretly asked me to take your measurements. He wanted it made especially for you, from a dressmaker in the city. He's been planning this for weeks. My hands trembled as I reached out to touch the fabric. So soft, so impossibly soft. "There's more," Nina added, pulling a small box from her pocket. "He wanted you to have this too." Inside was a piece of cake, rich and dark, studded with dried fruits and nuts, glazed with honey. My favorite, a flavor I hadn't tasted since my first life. When a street vendor in the city had sold it to me on the day I signed my first business contract. "He knows you like sweets," Nina said. "He had it brought all the way from the city, just for you." Something warm bloomed in my chest, spreading through my limbs like sunlight. For the first time since waking in this new life, I felt tears prick at my eyes. Could it be that in my past life, when Brandon had been kind to me, sharing food, buying me small luxuries, it hadn't been because he liked Hannah at all? Maybe from the beginning, the only person he had ever truly loved was me. But he had been too shy, too unsure to say so. And I had been too blind, too convinced of my own worthlessness to see it. A mistake, I thought. A mistake I would not make again. When I emerged from my room in the white dress, the transformation was complete. Hannah, slender and graceful in her borrowed red gown, had looked radiant when she appeared before the gathered villagers. Brandon's gaze had never left her. Compliments filled the air, words my sister had never heard in her 18 years of life. For a moment, she truly believed she had reached the peak of her glory. Then I stepped outside. The crowd fell silent. It was the 1990s. Life in the countryside was still simple and poor. Most people only knew of the outside world through traveling film shows. The newlywed brides from the village couldn't stop whispering among themselves, their eyes wide as they stared at me. "Wow, Lisa, that dress you're wearing, is that a wedding gown? My God, it's gorgeous. Caleb really knows how to treat his wife, doesn't he? He even rented such an expensive dress for you." "He didn't rent it," Nina said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "He bought it. From the city. 10,000 yuan." The gasps were audible. Hannah's face contorted. She remembered perfectly well that in her previous life, she had also worn a wedding gown, but a cheap one, borrowed and faded. And now, how could I, the sister she used to look down on, be the one wearing pure white silk and pearls? "Lisa, you better be careful with that gown," Hannah snapped, her voice dripping with venom. "If you ruin it, Caleb might get angry and call off the wedding." I laughed, cold and sharp. "Oh, didn't Brandon Lee rent you a wedding gown? Or was it that he couldn't afford one? Maybe all his money went into paying compensation to those women he got caught spying on." Hannah's face turned beet red. Her neck flushed with fury. "What are you laughing at?" she spat. "If I hadn't given up that wedding, it never would have been your turn." I tilted my head, sweet as poisoned honey. "Sister, whoever said I wanted to marry you?" Before I could say another word, a deep, calm voice came from behind me. "Caleb, please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this. Let's continue." I turned and my breath caught. He stood in a white suit, elegant and refined, looking like a movie star stepped out of a screen. The young girls nearby couldn't take their eyes off him, whispering enviously, wondering why fate hadn't given them such luck. His hair was neatly combed, his jaw clean-shaven, and he smelled. I inhaled discreetly, of soap and something else, something warm and masculine that made my knees weak. He gently wrapped his arm around my shoulders and turned with me to face Hannah. "Who said that nonsense?" he asked quietly, but there was steel beneath the calm. I'll make sure they are put in their place. Who in their right mind would give up a pearl for a pebble? People might think I'm blind. His gaze swept over Hannah with cold dismissal, then returned to me, soft and warm. And for the record, my family isn't poor enough to rent a wedding dress. I bought this myself. Even if Lisa wanted to burn it, I'd still be happy. The onlookers' expressions changed instantly. Their gazes toward me were full of admiration and envy. "Lisa's so lucky," someone murmured. "She's marrying a rich man like Caleb. She'll never have to worry about food again. Even their dog's gonna live better than most of us." Hannah's face cycled through red, yellow, and pale white. She covered her nose as if she smelled something foul. "It's not like I wanted to marry you anyway. Who'd want a man that smells like pigs?" I tilted my head slightly and inhaled. Only the faint scent of soap lingered. Nina bristled. "Don't talk nonsense. My brother hasn't gone near the pig farm for days. He asked someone else to take care of it because he didn't want to smell like that at the wedding. He even used 3 whole bars of soap just to make sure he wouldn't disgust his bride." Hannah's lips trembled. That's impossible." I smiled and met her gaze. "Not impossible. Just the truth. People of value always try to do their best. But those without value, they don't deserve to be respected in the first place." I slipped my arm through Caleb's, feeling the solid warmth of him against my side. "Shall we, husband?" His smile was like sunrise. "We shall, wife." As we walked away to toast the villagers, I glanced back. Hannah stood frozen, her face stormy, her hands clenched at her sides. She was chugging her drink, straight from the bottle, unladylike and desperate. The real drama, I thought, was only beginning. The wedding feast was everything a country celebration should be. Every dish on every table had meat: braised pork, steamed pork, stewed pork, stir-fried pork, sweet, sour, spicy, and savory. The abundance of it all made my head spin. I caught Caleb's eye across the table and mouthed, "Did you spend everything we have?" He grinned, unrepentant. "Worth every cent." His face was flushed from the wine, his eyes soft and full of affection as he looked at me. Under the table, his hand found mine and held it. "As long as you're happy," he said tenderly, "nothing else matters." I squeezed his fingers. "So it's only me who gets to be happy. What about you?" He hesitated for a moment, then laughed. "No, you make me the happiest man alive." We sat together, stealing glances and small touches, and for a moment I forgot that anything else existed. The past, the future, the tangled web of vengeance and regret, all of it faded in the warmth of his presence. Then my mother's sharp, scolding voice rang out from outside the door. My heart leapt. Right on schedule. Standing in the courtyard was Sophie Grant, the widow. Her eyes shimmered with tears as she looked at Brandon. Her pitiful expression made his face twist with guilt. Then, clutching her stomach, she dropped to her knees in front of Hannah. "I don't want to make things difficult for Brandon," Sophie said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "But while I can bear the pain, the baby inside me can't." The crowd gasped. Hannah went pale. Her jaw dropped. The wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the ground. "This child, his child, is hers," Sophie continued, playing her role perfectly. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to ruin your wedding day." But I couldn't keep it secret any longer. Hannah swayed on her feet, then crumpled into my mother's arms. Pandemonium erupted. Villagers shouted, children cried, and somewhere in the chaos, Brandon tried to slip away. But Sophie's performance had been too effective. Within minutes, gossip about the scandal spread like wildfire. Everyone soon knew that the groom had gotten a widow pregnant and ruined both weddings in one day. My mother panicked. Terrified that things would get out of control, she pulled Sophie aside and pressed something into her hands. I watched from across the courtyard, hiding my smile behind my teacup. The gold bracelets, the ones bought with my bride price. "Go to the city," I heard my mother hiss. "Take care of this problem. And don't come back." Sophie nodded, her expression unreadable. Her eyes met mine across the chaos, and I gave her the smallest of nods. "Go," I mouthed. "Find your family. Be free." She clutched the bracelets and disappeared into the crowd. Later that night, when Hannah finally regained consciousness, her expression was unreadable. Neither joy nor despair. She didn't lash out at our mother, nor did she storm off to confront Brandon. Instead, she behaved as if she had suddenly become the perfect, obedient wife. Quiet, beautiful, and gentle. She cooked and cleaned every day, waiting patiently for Brandon to come home for dinner. Afterward, she would head out to the fields with a hoe over her shoulder, working until dark. The village women who passed by whispered among themselves, "Has Hannah gone crazy or something?" She used to make Lisa clean the table for her when they lived together. And now she's not only willing to marry a thug like Brandon Lee, she's actually working for him like a servant. Another woman sighed. "Well, that's Hannah for you. Always talking big about how Brandon will make a fortune one day, acting all high and mighty like she's better than everyone else." Hannah overheard their gossip but didn't seem to care. She puffed out her chest and held her head high, strutting like a proud goose. I knew what she was thinking. I had thought it myself in my first life when Brandon's criminal enterprises began to pay off. A devoted wife shares her husband's hardships. In return, he'll give her all the gold in the world. If I can just endure this for now, once Brandon gets rich, all his money will be mine to manage. Poor fool. She had no idea what was coming. A month after the wedding, Caleb and I sat in our small courtyard, watching the fireflies dance in the gathering dusk. The house he had built was modest but warm, with a proper kitchen and a bedroom that faced east to catch the morning sun. Roses climbed the walls, their fragrance heavy in the summer air. "I've been thinking," I said, leaning against his shoulder. "About what?" "About the city." He stiffened slightly. In my first life, he had been content with his pigs and his farmland. It had taken years of gentle persuasion to convince him that there was more to life than the village. But this time, he surprised me. "I've been thinking about it too," he said slowly. "The business here is steady, but it's not growing. If you want more, we should expand." I sat up and looked at him. "You mean that?" "I mean everything I've ever said to you." He cupped my face in his hands, his thumbs brushing my cheekbones. "I would follow you anywhere, Lisa. Even to the city." My heart swelled. In the firelight, he looked young and earnest and impossibly dear. I kissed him then, soft and slow, and felt him smile against my lips. "We'll go together," I said. "We'll build something neither of us could build alone." 3 weeks later, we sold half the pig farm to a neighbor and packed our belongings into a rented cart. Nina, who had finished her schooling, came with us, eager and bright, ready to conquer the world. The city was everything I remembered and more. The buildings were taller, the streets busier, the smells and sounds overwhelming. Caleb gripped my hand as we navigated the crowds, his knuckles white. "Don't worry," I said. "I know exactly what we need to do." Using the money from the farm sale and my bride price, which I had insisted on keeping separate, much to my mother's outrage, we rented 2 prime storefronts at the largest wholesale market in the city. One for storage, one for a showroom. The rent was astronomical, or so Caleb thought. I knew it was a bargain. Now came the hard part. I found a garment factory on the outskirts of the city, run by a grizzled veteran named Mr. Triuang. He looked at me with skepticism when I walked in, a country girl in simple clothes, asking to discuss fashion. Then I showed him my sketches. The designs were based on the clothes I had seen in my second life, the ones that had made Diana Grace a household name. Bold colors, clean lines, silhouettes that flattered without constricting. They were modern without being trendy, classic without being boring. Mr. Tuong studied each drawing carefully. When he looked up, his eyes were different, sharp and appraising. "These are..." "Where did you learn to draw like this?" "I have a good eye," I said simply. "Can you make them?" He hesitated. "The samples will cost. I'll pay double your usual rate for the first batch. If they sell, you'll get a percentage of every subsequent order." His eyebrows rose. "That's a bold offer for someone who hasn't sold a single garment." I smiled. "I'm a bold person." He laughed, a genuine, surprised laugh, and extended his hand. "You've got yourself a deal, Mrs. Right." The samples arrived 2 weeks later. They were perfect, every stitch, every seam, exactly as I had imagined. Nina modeled them in the showroom, while I arranged them on racks and shelves. Caleb, who had never shown much interest in clothing before, watched with dawning amazement as women began to drift into the store. "These are beautiful," one woman said, running her fingers over a silk blouse. "Where did you get them?" "We make them ourselves," I said. Would you like to try one on? By the end of the first month, we had sold out of every sample. By the end of the second, Mr. Truong had tripled his production line to keep up with demand. By the end of the sixth, Diana Grace, named for no one and everyone, a brand that belonged to the women who wore it, had become a sensation. Caleb handled the business side while I focused on design. We made a good team, balancing each other's strengths and weaknesses. At night, we would sit on the balcony of our small apartment. We had upgraded from the storage room, thankfully, and watch the city lights flicker below. "I can't believe this is our life," Caleb said one evening, his arm around my shoulders. "A year ago, I was shoveling pig manure. Now he gestured vaguely at the skyline. Now you're a businessman," I finished. "A very successful one. We're successful," he kissed my temple. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." "Of course you could have. You're smarter than you give yourself credit for." "No," his voice was quiet but firm. "I mean it, Lisa. Before you, I was just drifting, doing what everyone expected, going nowhere. You gave me a reason to want more." I turned and looked at him, really looked, the way I should have in my first life. He was handsome, yes, but more than that, he was good. Kind and steady and true. A man who would never betray me, or abandon me, or use me for his own gain. "I love you," I said, and meant it with every part of me. His smile was like dawn breaking. "I love you too. More than you'll ever know." We sat together in the gathering dark, holding hands, and I thought, this is what happiness feels like. Not luxury or revenge or wealth, but this. Right here. Right now. A year later, I visited one of our flagship stores to check on operations and accidentally walked into a commotion. A well-dressed woman, arrogant, overdressed, with the kind of surgically altered face that screamed, "I have more money than taste," was standing in the middle of the store, ordering a young employee to kneel and help her put on her shoes. "I can't bend down," the woman announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. "My back hurts. And this girl is standing there like a statue. What are you paying her for if not to serve?" A crowd had gathered. The poor girl's head hung low under their stares. The woman pulled out a thick wad of cash and threw it at the employee's face. "Aren't customers supposed to be gods to people like you?" She sneered. "Here. This should be enough for you to call me mother, shouldn't it?" The young woman trembled, fighting back tears. The store manager hurried over, picked up the scattered bills, and tried to smooth things over. "We're terribly sorry, ma'am. It's our fault for not managing our staff properly." Then, turning to the employee, she barked, "What are you standing there for? If you can't do your job, you can leave. This store pays the highest wages in the city. There are plenty of people waiting to take your place." The girl's lips quivered. She didn't want to lose her job. Slowly, she knelt down, reaching a shaking hand toward the woman's shoes. Before her fingers could touch them, I stepped forward and stopped her. "Stand up," I said quietly. "You don't have to do this." The girl looked up, her face frozen in surprise. The manager recognized me and went pale. "Mrs. Right. I'm so sorry. The new employee refuses to follow instructions. She doesn't want to work. The new employee is being treated like a servant," I interrupted. "That's not what we do here." The young woman burst into tears. "I came here to work, not to be someone's servant. They make me buy coffee during lunch breaks, and whenever there's a difficult customer, they push me forward to deal with them. I'm human too. Why does she get to trample on my dignity?" The manager laughed, a sharp, cold sound. "Dignity? You're an employee. Once you work here, you do what you're told. And if you make this store lose money, you'll have to work half a month for free to make up for it." I turned to the manager. "You have 10 minutes to draft a resignation letter and bring it to me." Her face went white. "Mrs. Right, you must be mistaken. I was only doing this for the good of the company. This store is a place for people to work," I said, "not to be enslaved. And from what I've seen, your attitude toward your employees is the real problem. If you won't resign yourself, I'll have HR terminate your employment through proper channels." The manager's jaw dropped. But before she could respond, the arrogant woman in the expensive shoes let out a sharp, incredulous voice. "Lisa, is that really you?" I turned. The woman's face was stretched unnaturally smooth, her chin too sharp, her lips too plump. But I would have recognized those eyes anywhere. "Hello, Hannah," I said calmly. I see you've had some work done. Her face contorted, or tried to anyway. The buttocks made the expression look strange and incomplete. You're the owner of Diana Grace, one of them. My husband and I co-own the company. Her eyes darted around the store, taking in the expensive displays, the fashionable clientele, the obvious success. Jealousy burned in her gaze, bright and ugly. This is impossible, she hissed. You're just a pig farmer's wife. You can't. I'm a business owner, I corrected. And you're in my store, humiliating my employees. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You can't throw me out. I'm a customer who threw money at one of my staff and demanded she kneel. No, I shook my head. That's not how we treat people here. Nora, please escort this woman out. A security guard appeared at Hannah's elbow. Her face purpled with rage. You'll regret this, Lisa. You think just because you own a clothing brand, you're better than me. Don't delude yourself. You'll never be on the same level as my husband. Your husband? I repeated, keeping my voice mild. How is Brandon these days? Still running his business? Hannah's eyes flickered, just for a moment, with something that might have been fear. Then she lifted her chin. He's more successful than you'll ever be. His company is worth millions. I'm sure it is. I smiled pleasantly. Goodbye, Hannah. She stormed out, dragging her equally obnoxious friends behind her. The crowd in the store buzzed with speculation. The young employee looked at me with tears still on her cheeks. Mrs. Right, I thank you. I'll do better, I promise. I'll work harder. Just do your job, I said gently. That's all I ask. And if anyone treats you badly, you come to me directly. Understood, she nodded, sniffling. I turned to the manager, who was still standing frozen by the counter. You're fired. Collect your things, but Mrs. Right, no, my voice was cold now. I don't tolerate cruelty in my stores. Not from customers, and certainly not from managers. You're done here, she left in tears. I felt no sympathy. In my first life, I had learned the hard way that kindness without accountability was just weakness. And I would never be weak again. 3 years later, the news broke. Caleb came home from taking our daughter to school, his face pale, a newspaper clutched in his hand. You need to see this. The headline screamed in bold letters, "Major scam ring busted, dozens arrested, including local businessman Brandon Lee." I read the article slowly, savoring every word. The police had raided the operation the night before, arresting everyone involved. Brandon, who had risen to second in command under the notorious Kevin Hughes, was facing charges that carried the death penalty. And Hannah, poor, foolish Hannah, had been arrested too. She had been handling the money, laundering millions through shell companies and offshore accounts. They're saying the evidence is overwhelming, Caleb said, sitting down heavily beside me. Witnesses, documents, recordings. It's all there. I set down the newspaper. Good, Lisa, he hesitated. She's your sister, in name only. I looked out the window at the garden where our daughter was chasing butterflies. She made her choices, just like I made mine. In my first life, Hannah had killed me. In my second, I had watched her die, sentenced to death for crimes that had destroyed countless innocent lives. This time, the timing was different, but the outcome would be the same. Some fates, I had learned, were inescapable. The trial lasted 3 months. The prosecution presented evidence of fraud, extortion, money laundering, and in several cases, assault. Victims took the stand, their stories heartbreaking and familiar. Elderly couples who had lost their life savings. College students lured into debt schemes. Families destroyed by greed, dressed up as opportunity. I attended the sentencing. Hannah sat in the defendant's box, her surgically altered face now gaunt and hollow. When the judge pronounced the death sentence, she didn't cry. She just stared straight ahead, her expression blank. Then her eyes found mine. There was no hatred there, not anymore. Just emptiness, the recognition of a future that would never come. I held her gaze for a long moment. Then I looked away. My mother came to the city 3 days later. She stood outside my flagship store, screaming at the security guards, wailing for everyone to hear. My daughter is so ungrateful. Her sister is in trouble, and she refuses to help. She's a rich businesswoman now, spends millions every day, but she won't even save her own sister's life. A crowd gathered, drawn by the commotion. Some whispered sympathetically. Others pulled out their phones to record. I watched from the window of my office on the second floor. Nina, who had been with me since the beginning, stood beside me, her arms crossed. "Should I call the police?" she asked. "No," I smoothed my skirt and walked toward the stairs. "I'll handle this." When I stepped outside, my mother was still wailing, her white hair disheveled, her clothes wrinkled, the costume of a grieving mother, carefully arranged for maximum sympathy. "Lisa," she lunged toward me, but the security guard caught her arm. "You heartless girl. Your sister is going to die, and you just stand there in your fancy clothes. What exactly did Hannah do, Mother?" I asked, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "Or do you really not know she was running an international scam ring?" The murmuring shifted. Some of the onlookers had been victims of similar schemes. I could see it in their faces. "She tricked innocent people out of their money," I continued. "Elderly couples who lost their retirement savings. Students who were promised jobs and ended up in debt. Tell me, how am I supposed to save someone like that?" The crowd's sympathy evaporated. Someone shouted, "Scammers deserve worse than death." Another called out, "Let her rot in prison." My mother's face twisted with fury. "So what if she was a scammer? She's still your sister. You think you're so good. Why don't you go get plastic surgery to look like her and take her place on death row, huh?" I almost laughed. "Mom, she's been sentenced to death. And I, your so-called unfilial daughter, donate to charity every year, helping real people in need. Why should I die in her place?" My mother had no answer. She could only stand there, trembling with rage, her carefully constructed narrative crumbling around her. "You've made your choices," I said quietly. "Both of you. And now you have to live with them." I turned and walked back into the store, leaving her to the mercy of the crowd. Behind me, I heard Caleb's voice, calm, measured, recording everything on his phone. For the company website, he would tell me later. Free publicity, the footage went viral. Within hours, the story had spread across the country. Public opinion, which had briefly wavered, swung firmly in my favor. Diana Grace's sales increased by 30% that quarter. My mother returned to the village, shunned by everyone. No one visited her. No one spoke to her. When she died, 15 years later, alone and forgotten, I paid for her funeral and her memorial shrine. But I did not cry. 20 years after that first wedding, I sat on the balcony of our house, a sprawling estate on the outskirts of the city, with a garden full of roses and a koi pond that our daughter liked to feed, and watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Caleb sat beside me, his hand in mine. His hair had gone gray at the temples, but his eyes were still warm, his smile still kind. "Do you ever think about them?" he asked quietly. "Your mother and sister, sometimes." I watched the clouds drift across the sky. But not with sadness anymore. What then? I considered the question. So many lives lived, so many choices made. The sister who had killed me in one timeline died in another, and been sentenced to death in this one. The mother who had loved one daughter and sacrificed the other. The husband I had ignored in my first life, cherished in my second, and built an empire with in this third. "Gratitude," I said finally. "If things had been different, if Hannah hadn't been so greedy, if Mother hadn't been so blind, I never would have found my way to you." Caleb squeezed my hand. "You would have found me eventually. We were always meant to end up together." I leaned my head on his shoulder. "Is that so? I knew at the moment I saw you." His voice was soft, almost wondering. "Standing in the shadows at your mother's house, watching everyone else fight over Hannah. You look so calm, so sure of yourself. Like you already knew how everything would turn out." I smiled. In a way, I had. Our daughter appeared in the doorway, fresh from university, her arms full of design sketches. "Mom, Dad, you have to see these. The new collection is going to be amazing." She had inherited my eye for fashion and Caleb's head for business, the best of both of us. In a few years, she would take over the company, and I would finally rest. But not yet. Not quite yet. I took the sketches from her hands and spread them across the table, and for a little while, I forgot about the past. The dead and the dying, the revenge and the regret. There was only this moment, this family, this life I had built from nothing. A life worth living. Before we left the village for the last time, I turned back to look at the house that had held 18 years of my childhood. Under the old osmanthus tree, I could almost see my sister again, young and smiling, holding out a clump of mud wrapped in a leaf. "Here," she'd said. "This is your rice." I had pretended to eat it, grinning. "You're so good to me, sis. It's delicious." But the memory shifted. I saw my mother and Hannah whispering together, their heads bent close. "The right family is wealthy," my mother said. "You must marry Caleb. As for Lisa, she can have Brandon. That girl's too obedient to ever defy me." I closed my eyes and sighed. In the end, time had turned two sisters, bound by blood, into mortal enemies. I no longer knew whether to blame fate or the fickleness of human hearts. Perhaps both. Perhaps neither. But from this moment on, I decided I would stop carrying the pain. I would live freely and live happily. My mother and sister had both paid the ultimate price for their choices. And wherever they were now, justice would find them still. Caleb's hand found mine. Ready, I looked at him, my husband, my partner, my home, and smiled. Ready, we walked away from the old house, the old tree, the old ghosts. Behind us, the osmanthus tree dropped its flowers like tears. Ahead of us, the future waited, bright and endless and full of second chances. If you've enjoyed walking this journey of revenge and rebirth with Reborn English drama, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to keep creating and bringing more powerful stories to life. Every comment means a lot and helps the channel grow stronger each day. Thank you for listening, and I can't wait to see you in the next story.